Good evening, I'm Jeff Koinange, and this is Jeff Koinange Live. Tonight, I'll make that. Before we go to tonight's topic, I'd like to address an issue that happened last Thursday when my guest was none other than Tony Gashoka. Well, Gashoka produced a couple of shockers of his own, and we at KTN feel we had to take a stand because of his mannerisms and his behavior and what he was saying. We have to make this decision going forward. From now on, Tony Gashoka will no longer be a guest on this show. You can say as many oh my's as you want, but from now on, no more shockers from Gashoka. If it's Wednesday, you know it's all about the state of the nation, in particular the state of corruption. And you know, week after week we talk about corruption on a grand level. Billions lost in government, ministry, this and that, billions. Tonight, we're going to take a microcosm, narrow it down to the normal Koinange. And this comes in the form of Imperial Bank. This is what we know so far. September 15th, Jan Mohammed, the managing director of Imperial Bank, dies suddenly. 4 days later, he's buried. A few days later, senior officials of the bank go to the chairman, Al-Nashir Pabat, and they tell him that there was what they call dual books, a double ledger being written, being submitted by the late Jan Mohammed. Meaning there was one figure being given to the central bank and another figure being given to shareholders, and none of them corresponded. So the chairman calls the central bank, an investigation is made. Fast forward, October 13th. Many of you who bank with Imperial Bank know that date. October 13th, Central Bank puts Imperial Bank under receivership. 53,000 account holders, monies frozen in the blink of an eye. No warning, nothing. I'll say that again, 53,000. October 13th was 4 weeks and change. In fact, we're going into our 5th week. You know the story, it's been in the papers back and forth. 34 billion shillings siphoned off in 15 years. How couldn't shareholders have known? That is a question we're asking going forward. And then this headline in today's Business Daily. Imperial Bank is going to need some $40 billion in injection funds to get it going again. The question is that even possible? And in the meantime, how long will that take? What happens to the 53,000 clients who have accounts with Imperial Bank? So, a few days ago, my first guest wrote a blog, and it was addressed to Imperial Bank. And in it, she literally addressed the bank's shareholders, saying, what goes on, or what do we do? How do we carry on with our lives? The blog went viral. I have her on tonight, and I have a couple more guests in the show tonight. In the next hour, we're going to explore what is the way forward in this, what we call the microcosm of corruption. My guest, Aleya Kassam. She is a copywriter, has a decent job, ordinary job, but now she has to take care of 6 people in her family. No funds coming in. Her salary is basic. How do they go forward? And I know you probably know someone who has an account at Imperial Bank who cannot pay their rent this month, or indeed buy groceries or pay school fees. That's our topic tonight. We're going down to the ground level. My Twitter handle is @Koinange Jeff. The hashtag we're using tonight is counting the losses. Let's count the losses as we discuss Imperial Bank. First up, Aleya Kassam. Aleya, good to see you.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on the show. I mean, that blog was out of this world. It just blew up. What made you want to write it?
Well, I think really in the last month, since the message came in, the Imperial Bank has gone under receivership message, we as a family have been confronted with what are we going to do? Because all of a sudden now we have no access to any money. You multiply that by 53,000 people, multiply that really by 53,000 families. And, as you sort of fight fires and figure out what's the short-term solution, you stay in hope that something's going to happen. And you borrow money. And a month passes and you realize, well, can we borrow money again? And we have no idea what's happening. And got to thinking about what is the actual human impact when a bank like that closes. What does it mean for a family? So the blog post was very personal. It was from our family's context, what does that mean? And really the other thing that really moved me to write the blog is, in that account is my grandfather's life's work, my grandmother's life's work, my father's life's work, my mother's life's work. What does that life's work look like? It's like 155 years worth of working.
Okay, we're going to read a bit of the blog in a moment, Aleya, but first, when you heard, I'm sure the tweets went out and the WhatsApps went out on October 13th, that this bank is going to under receivership. The moment you heard it, did you rush to the ATM? What was your first reaction?
So I was sitting at work and, it came in WhatsApp, and anything that comes in WhatsApp is sort of dubious. And you think, well, clearly this is some sort of prank. And then so people who were able to rush out to the bank, rushed to the bank was shut. They couldn't access the money from the ATMs, and so information started flowing that actually this is serious. So at that point, whatever we had in our wallets was what we had access to.
What was your first reaction? Were you angry? Were you annoyed? Were you in denial? Were you numbed? What was it?
I think it was disbelief. And then it was, a sense of it'll be fine. It'll sort itself out. In a few days, whatever has happened will be clarified, things will be fine. Because you can't really grasp having possibly lost everything, right? And then as time passes by, you think, well, nothing's really happening, and the reality that possibly you may actually have lost everything starts to come to the ground.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you feel anger, you feel, I think also a sense of helplessness, a sense of, what can we do? What do those 53,000 people do to put pressure on the powers that be to see how this is affecting people's lives?
Yeah. Let's go to your blog.
All right.
How long did it take you to? Did you just decide, I need to do something?
My blog is a very personal space, so I never wrote this with the intention that it would go viral. I think the reason it did is because it resonated for so many people. I'm fortunate in that I have a platform, however small it is, that gave voice to what a lot of people were feeling and experiencing. And I think that's really the reason that it went viral the way it did.
Read an excerpt.
Okay. Exactly 1 month ago, on a cloudless morning, a message soundlessly snuck into our family WhatsApp group. Imperial Bank had been placed under receivership. Overnight, we were rendered effectively broke. Just like that. You see, every single shilling our family has is in Imperial Bank. Every single shilling. With only a few hundred bob in the wallet, we didn't even have the money to pay our electricity bill. And it's been like that for a month now, with no idea what's going on or whether we will ever be able to access that money. In the last month, entire families have had to beg and borrow money to put food on their tables and pay rent. Children have had to be recalled from university, and businesses have been paralyzed. And it's been 1 month, and all we've gotten in that 1 month is shrugged shoulders.
Okay, let's face it, and we got to put this out there, you are part of the Popat family. You're related to them, right? And Popat's own Imperial Bank. Are you not?
Well, the Popat family have certain shareholding, and when I say family, it's an individual. So yes, there is a certain family relationship.
And obviously the Popats will probably say, what is wrong with Aleya? I mean, why is she coming at us like this?
I don't think that you can really brush over a family with broad strokes and say the Popats. There's a lot of people responsible in this. There's a lot of people who played a role. This letter was from an individual to another individual under their capacity and their responsibility as a director or shareholder. I can only speak for myself, But having said that, I'm sitting here also cognizant of the fact that there are 53,000 families out there. So even in that I have a relationship with the family, there's 53,000 families out there whose livelihoods depend on the money in that bank. That's a huge deal.
Sure. And look, you've been getting some family support in the last month or so. What about the people with 5,000 shillings in the bank, 10,000 shillings in the bank? What happens to them?
Precisely. I mean, again, I sit here with the fact that we've got a certain level of support just by virtue of family, by virtue of whatever it is. We've been able to get by this month. We've been able to borrow money. Perhaps we borrow money another month. Then what? I have a roof over my head. We may have to sell that home. We don't have kids that we're putting through school. We do have I have elderly grandparents that require medical support. Having said all of that, there's a lot of people that are in a significantly worse situation than I am, who aren't being given that voice, and I just feel like there needs to be a sense of compassion around what those people are going through, people who don't have that support network.
Okay, I'm going to be a little unfair with this next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Look, people consider you all the 43rd tribe in Kenya, the Indian Kenyans. Even though you're first, second, third generation Kenyan, you're still considered the 43rd tribe. And for the longest time, you all are very enclosed. You all don't talk, you don't come out, you don't discuss. Why come out now, Aleya?
Look, there's a historical context behind why the Asian community has been a little bit more conservative about coming out. And that historical context is one that we don't have time for right now. Really, again, like I said, this was a personal story. And the reality also, Jeff, is that when systems don't work, it affects everybody. It doesn't look at the color, creed, community, age, race, nothing. It affects everybody. So when we look at the depositors within Imperial Bank, certainly there's certain communities that have been hit harder than others. But at the end of the day, if that banking structure is not addressed with adequately, it's going to affect other people too.
Personally, how long are you going to last the way you're going right now? How long can you last with the little funds you have? Can you go another month?
We've got enough to go another month. We're having very difficult conversations right now about do we sell the house. It's a home that my parents have built, having worked for 40 years. And really worked hard, 10-hour days. And they've built that home. And they're both retired, and it's a sense of we've got a roof over our head. And as Kenyans, you know how we are about land. So now I feel legitimately Kenyan since we own a piece of land. But I feel it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking that we might have to sell that family home, that all of a sudden life becomes so much more tenuous again.
What are your parents, what are they saying right now?
Well, they feel like, abandoned. They feel angry. They feel a sense of, what is going on? Is someone taking care of these interests? We need to be able to go on with our lives.
I have information, I have some documents from the central bank. And apparently the central bank offered, or rather told the shareholders, pay 20 billion of the 40, pay half. Yeah. And then the rest we'll figure out as we go along.
Yeah.
And the shareholders said, you know what, we can only come up with 10 right now.
Yeah.
Is that fair? Because you want the bank reopened, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we want the bank reopened. Look, I'm not a banker. I don't understand the nitty-gritties of all of this.
What would you want right now?
I think that really to be unable to access any of your money is a very difficult situation to be in. So it's in everybody's best interest for the bank to be up and running in some way and form, for us to, Jeff, buy milk. How's that? Pay our electricity bill. There's certain level of functioning that you need that right now we don't have access to. So even as they sort out whatever they need to sort out, as they do investigations and hold people accountable, because that's important too, they've also got to figure out what do we need to do to make sure that the bank is functioning.
What do you tell people? People are watching you right now and saying, you know what? Welcome to our world.
Yeah.
We have a hard time buying milk. We have a hard time paying matatu fare.
Yeah,
welcome to our world.
Yeah.
What do you tell them?
I really get that. Writing this letter, reinforced to me how tenuous life can be. And I sit here with very aware that I have a certain level of privilege. And I think that there's a large number of depositors within the Imperial Bank who have that, who have those shock-absorbing systems, who have the education to be able to go, who have salaries, have the education to be able to go and get another job. I think it comes down again to systems. As a country, if we don't get our systems credible, legitimate, if we don't enforce some sort of consequence and understand that what we're doing, who we are being as Kenyans in terms of our value systems, is hurting us down to the core of everybody who sits here.
Well, for weeks we've been discussing corruption on a grand scale.
Yeah.
Billions lost, billions stolen, billions embezzled. Now it hits home with this. For me, this is a microcosm. Do you agree this is a microcosm of corruption in Kenya?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that it's very easy to sit in a little corner and say, well, this doesn't affect me. I've got to do what I've got to do. The reality is, it will at some point affect you. And I think what I really hoped that my blog post did was to show the human impact of something like that. What it actually means, these numbers that we throw around, 53 billion, whatever, all these numbers we throw around, what does it actually mean to someone's life?
It's a sad situation, Aleya. We're going to talk about that more after the break. And I want to bring in Rita in, because, that's another example. Rita Rogers is going to come up after the break. She actually runs a children's orphanage. And all the monies, all the accounts, all the salaries are in Imperial Bank. And by the way, her husband is due for surgery in India next month. They booked the appointments, but they can't pay for it. And he needs to go for surgery. That's when it really hits home. You have a Twitter handle, right?
I do.
What is it?
At Aleya Kassam.
At Aleya Kassam. At Koinange Jeff. The hashtag we're using tonight, counting the losses. Keep tweeting. We're going to read your tweets, come back, talk to Rita, and later on, another young man who left his comfortable perch in London, moved all his resources to Kenya. Guess what? Imperial Bank. Oh my. Jeff Koinange Live takes a break. We'll be back.